Country Talk Radio. You're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Hello, and welcome to Intersect Radio. Today, I'm here with my good friend, buddy, and interviewer for today again, Mr. Mark Robertson.
Hello.
And we got cut short last week, so we decided to do a part two. So without much ado, we're just going to jump right into it and, use all the time we have.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Well, it's a lot of life to take in, so
Yeah.
You've lived a lot of life. When we left off last week, you had just got drafted into the Army, and you were starting basic training. So as I remember, you were in a shooting kind of training, and it started raining. That's where we left off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I had a relationship with all the guys in my company area, because when I got drafted, I was working for a Motown artist, and I had actually done some recording with the Temptations before I went into the Army. And so all my guys in my barracks knew about that. And so we'd be outside on the weekend or some cleaning weapons or something, and somebody would have their transistor radio, and Just My Imagination or some Temptation song would come on, and they'd run and find me. They go, Smith, they're playing your song. And so this morning we went out for target scoring. We were shooting for scores about the end of basic training, and it was raining cats and dogs that morning, and it rained that way all day. And we're in the foxhole shooting, and all the detergents washed out of my clothes into my skin. And that night I had an allergic reaction, and I had to go to the company area hospital the next day. And the doc took one look at me and said, well, you can stay in the Army all your life, and we'll give you medicines to take care of this, or you can get out. So it was really a hard decision, because by that time I'm pretty brainwashed and gung ho, And
I imagine you had a sense of duty.
Well, yeah, that too, and I had done my time there, and I had done it diligently,
Yeah.
And so I stuttered, and the captain kind of got an attitude. He was a doctor. He said, come on, young man, you either stay in and get out, make up your mind. And so I fired back at him. I said, okay, I'm out. He said, have a seat. I took a seat, and he was away about 10 minutes, and he came back, hit me in the chest with some papers, and said, you're out.
Wow.
And so I went back to my barracks, and the guys had all been out. They have this thing where you have to crawl under barbed wire while live rounds are shooting over your head. They had just finished that. And so they were like telling me about that. And so they were asking me, well, what'd you do today? And I said, well, I got out today. I got out of the Army today. And they were like, what? And it was pretty sad, because people start crying.
Yeah.
We all start crying and bawling because we had really bonded,
Right.
And so that next day, I went to this barracks that was a little outside of the company area with a guy who had just gotten back from Vietnam. It's called Holding Company. Just before you get out, you come to this place while your papers are being done, but you're away from everybody else.
Okay, I see.
And he would tell me about Vietnam, and I was glad I wasn't going. And he had a duffel bag that the bottom was just lined with hashish that he had brought back from Vietnam. So we spent our nights out on the deck with his pipe and his stories.
I gotcha.
Yeah. And so when I got out, went home, got back into Chuck Jackson's band, worked my way back to Detroit, and Norman came to the show. And after the show, he came backstage and he goes, "Where have you been?" Because he had said he was going to call me,
right?
To come work with the Undisputed Truth. So I told him the whole story. And he said, "Well, I still want you to do it." And this is like August. He said, "I still want you to come, and I'm going to send for you around October.
All right.
And I want you to move up here to Detroit." And sure enough, he did. Sent for me, picked me up at the airport, drove his Jaguar XKE onto the strip, which you could do that then. And we loaded my bags into his Jaguar, and he sent a truck out to get my drums and moved me into a hotel on Woodward Avenue.
And to put this into a little bit of context, when Aaron says Norman Whitfield is one of the most important record producers of all time.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a big give there.
Yeah, he pretty much kept Motown Records afloat after the move to L.A. because Holland, Dozier, and Holland had split, had left Motown over money disputes.
Okay.
Prior to that move, and so Norman stuck around.
He did a ton of writing at that point too.
Yeah, and he had that group did Car Wash, all that stuff, and he wrote all that stuff, and it was a very fruitful time for him. And I did the Undisputed Truth thing, came back, did that. We toured with the Jackson 5 the summer of 1971.
Wow.
And
were they as amazing live as their records are unbelievable?
Oh yeah, they were.
Yeah,
they were. I used to watch them because they flew and we were driving a station wagon, hauling a trailer. I would watch them sometimes. Sometimes we didn't have time to stay and watch a show because we had to jump in the car and drive to the next city.
Right.
And some drive just in time to go and run on stage, do a quick sound check, set up our equipment, do a quick sound check, and then bam, do the show. Right. By this time, the arena, the Coliseum is almost full, and we're in front of all these people straight out of the station wagon setting up. It's kind of embarrassing, actually.
Well, that's funny to imagine the Temps having to. That just says how huge the Jackson 5 were then, because the Temps were a headline act, not an opener.
Right.
So that just must have been massive.
Yeah. But so I did Undisputed Truth and came home after that, and nothing was going on. And I had a roommate, Jacob. Jacob's mom was an on-fire Christian, hell and brimstone. And one Saturday morning, she came to our apartment, just knocking on the door ferociously, And so Jacob got up and opened the door for his mom, and she came in preaching. You boys are going to hell, going to clubs, playing in nightclubs, staying out all night, drinking, going to hell. You need to get a job, something, change your life, So we said, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So that Sunday, that next day, we got a Sunday paper, and we both started looking for jobs. He found a security job, which he loved. He loved carrying a gun, and he bought a black car. He wore black clothes. He was like a private guy, He loved that job. I found a job in a carpet place, a place that was starting this school to show people how to lay carpet, how to choose carpet, about all the fibers and all that sort of stuff, but they wanted to keep it a secret. So it was just a tiny ad in the paper. I called the number and they said, yeah, come on down. And it was in this warehouse up top in like a attic in a warehouse. And they told us what they wanted to do, and it had to be a secret and don't talk to anybody about it. So I did that right up until the week before. I went home one day after that whole class because it was an 8-hour thing, and they were paying us a little bit, you know.
Okay.
And I went home, and there was a big sign on the kitchen table that said, "Call Cornelius Grant," and Cornelius's telephone number. And we all know who Cornelius was. He was the musical director for the Temptations. He is considered the sixth Temptation.
Sure. And
it just so happened that Jacob had got sick that day and didn't go to work, so he was there to answer the phone.
Right.
You know. So I called Cornelius, and he said, well, you know, the Temps are looking for a new drummer. I went down to Hitsville today and I looked at the roster, and under drummers, you're the only name there that I hadn't played with, the only guy I never played with. So I'm calling you. You want to come over and audition? So, yes. Threw my drums in the car, went over to Cornelius's house, set up in the basement. He put a reel-to-reel tape player there, and headphones, and a music stand with charts. And so I'm looking at charts because I don't read that well.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't read that well. But I had been in a band in Durham, North Carolina called the Imitating Temptations. And we played their show.
Right.
So I knew their show. When the tape started rolling, I went to myself, oh, yeah, I know this. So I pretended to read the charts.
That's awesome.
And played. And a week later, I was in Toronto to do my first Temptations show.
That's crazy. That's so cool. That's so cool. You automatically got the training. So,
yeah.
So where did it go from there?
Well, from there, you know, that first show, here's the thing about that first show, was outside. It was with the OJs and some band called Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Some band.
Yeah, some band. And I was asking the guys in the Temptations band, you know, about, I knew about the OJs, but I had never heard of Earth, Wind, and Fire. And they were going, yeah, they're these kids. They jump up and down on the stage, you know, it's okay. And so we went out. It was outside in the stadium, and it was very windy that day. And we set up, and the music wouldn't stay on the charts. And somebody called out for clothespins, you know, and it was just a really bad sound check. And so we went back to the hotel, and I was so scared and so nervous that I made my room as dark as I could make it, and I went to sleep. And a few hours later, I had called downstairs for a wake-up call. And a few hours later, my phone rings, and I'm thinking it's my wake-up call, but it's the Temptations manager telling me the gig was canceled because they were having a thunderstorm. And I went, really? Thank you.
Oh, wow.
And so I ran to the window. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe I was dreaming. So I ran to the window, pulled back the curtains, and sure enough, you know, it's like raining, lightning and stuff. I was so relieved. I was so happy. I think I got dressed and went downstairs and had dinner.
That's awesome.
But right after that next day, we went to the Apollo, and we stayed in the Apollo for a week, and we did 3 shows a day during the week and 4 shows on the weekend.
Wow.
So by the time we left there, I could play the Temptations show backwards.
Oh, sure.
In my sleep.
Sure.
On a moment's notice, you know. And so that went on. The Temptations gig lasted a couple of years.
Well, I wouldn't mind hearing about the Funk Brothers if you.
Okay.
Does that tie into this?
Well,
like
yeah.
Working with some of those cats? Yeah.
I had, even after I got with the Temptations, we used to do what they call a circular tour. Cities, major cities and universities around Detroit, and we get on a bus, and we'd have to take a horn section. So the horn section we took were all the Motown guys that played on the tunes. But when I first started doing sessions with Norman, I go in, and they're not known as the Funk Brothers then, but, I know Jamerson, and they're all there. I mean, they're all there, and they're very nice to me. And Earl Van Dyke was just like a father figure almost, very kind, patient, encouraging. I could play this certain beat, the doom ta doom ta doom doom ta doom ta. Everybody can play that now, but then that was new.
Right. Okay. That's awesome.
and so I could play it, and he would go, "Yeah, man, play that beat." And I'd play it. He started smiling and go, yeah, that's cool.
Oh, that's so great.
But, I had a great time. Jamerson was very quiet, but he was very nice. All those guys, man, they were just, Pistol, my first session I did for the Temptations was a song called Smiling Faces, which later the Undisputed Truth did, and theirs was a hit. And Pistol just sat at the other drum kit and watched me play and listened to the session go down, and there was no animosity, no nothing.
Wow.
It was very cool.
Wait, I could picture Smiling Faces with that beat you were just talking about too. That's cool.
Yeah, it was, those were fun days. I didn't know what I was in, but I was really in something,
You ever catch yourself now, though, today going like, oh, my goodness, I did sessions with Bob Babbitt and Norman Whitfield and James Jamerson.
Yeah.
It's like, that's got to, maybe you didn't even catch it at the time, the weight of it.
Yeah, I didn't. Not at the time. The weight of it, the weight that I did catch was, I'm at Motown,
Absolutely.
But, being with these cats, it was a whole different world. I never saw any of them outside of the studio, but saw them a lot at Hitsville.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, it was a great time. And things, I don't know if things happen for people like that anymore.
Well, they didn't much then either, man.
Right.
All right, we'll be right back.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al DiMeola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
All right, we're back. Let's see. So when we left off, you were touring with the Jackson 5. You're playing with all these amazing legends. Probably didn't quite know at the time that what it was. But then at some point, the Temptations thing ended, and you moved out of Detroit.
Yeah. Well, Motown moved out of Detroit.
Sure.
And so I thought it was wise to follow. But once I got to LA, things changed, and for some reason, I'm not quite sure. The Temptations would always take the month of January and half of February off every year. We'd go to Japan in December, come back to Hawaii, and have Christmas off, and then we go to San Mateo and play the Circle Star Theater for New Year's Eve.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, was there enough dough to take 6 weeks off and not have to get a gig? Could you earn enough to just take the time?
Well, if you were frugal,
okay.
yeah.
I don't know what the pay scale would have been like then.
Yeah, if you weren't, no.
Okay.
But you always knew it was coming.
Right.
So, and it kind of gave you an opportunity to do other things, but not for long. No, you couldn't commit to anything really. But when I moved to LA, I moved into this kind of a hotel place with all these musicians from all over the country. They're pretty much bands that had moved to LA and all trying to get record contracts and stuff like that. And
was it strictly like Motown related, or was it a bunch of different bands?
It was a bunch of different bands. They were all, let's say, bands like Kool and the Gang.
Okay.
Bands like that,
yeah.
Not Motown related pretty much, but just, things had changed. Things were changing musically, even for black players. You had Kool and the Gang, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah.
All that stuff was beginning to happen. And so the Temps never called me back to start again in February. So I got.
Do you know why?
I never found out.
Okay.
Never found out.
I thought you said that when we talked before that you asked for a raise.
Well, I did. I had asked for a raise, but
I think that's a little bit of an odd coincidence that they never called back after that.
Maybe. So, yeah, okay. Anyway, I got an unemployment. I got an apartment. Moved out of the hotel, got an apartment, and I started meeting people. I had friends there from my hometown in Durham who had a regular gig at this club out in Inglewood, and the drummer was the lead singer. So I would go out some weekends and play drums for them so that he could come out front and sing. And I got to, Norman still called me for sessions because he was in L.A. I got to play on Masterpiece, that Temptations record.
Oh, awesome.
Being out in L.A. And also David Ruffin's Me and Rock and Roll, Here to Stay. And Norman actually got me an interview, I guess you could call it, with the Jackson 5, and I went out to the Jackson place, and I didn't read good enough, but I had a good time.
Well, that's cool.
Had a good time hanging with the 5, and that's when one morning, it's about 8 a.m, a phone rings, and it's James Gatson. Really, he was like the drummer for all the R&B stuff in L.A. Played in this band called Watts 105th Street Band. He also was the drummer with Bill Withers. Did that great record, Use Me Up.
That's awesome.
Lovely
groove.
Day and all that sort of stuff. And he calls me And he goes, "Hey man, what are you doing? You working today?" And I went, "No." He says, "Well, my back is killing me." He had been in a car accident a couple of years before that. He was still having back problems. He said, I can't play any drums today, and I got a session at 10 o'clock, and I need somebody to go fill in for me." And I went, "Okay, I'll do it." So who's it with? He goes, "Ray Charles." And I go, "Okay, yeah, okay." And right then the nerves just shatter, you know.
You got 2 hours to wrap your head around this.
Yes. And so I throw my drums in the car, go over to Ray Charles' studio, and it's with a big band. And it's just one song. And I'm struggling to play this song because it's so different from anything else I ever played, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray Charles is engineering. And
how does that work? Was it good?
Well, let's say he was producing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a better term. He had an engineer, but he was producing.
Okay.
He hit the talkback mic once, and he goes, "Okay, little drummer, settle down. You're pretty nervous in there." I went, "Yes, sir." So I did it. We finally get out of there, and my friend Robertson, who had been a roommate of mine in Detroit, and who was also he also did a lot of sessions with the Funk Brothers, and he was out in L.A. and he called me to do his record. He did one record for Warner Brothers up in San Francisco. So I went up to San Francisco, did that record for him, and after we got back, he got me audition with Herbie Hancock. So I go to Herbie's house and I'm jamming with the band, and Herbie was really kind. He went, "Oh man, you sound pretty good, but I don't think you're the guy we're looking for."
Okay.
So I said, "Okay." And
how old are you at this point?
I'm about 22, 23.
Okay.
No, 24 actually.
All right.
24.
That's still awfully young. Yeah.
And about a week later, Wawa called me and said, "I want to introduce you to this bass player. His name is Miroslav Vitus." And I went, "Yeah, I've heard of him, you know, because Miroslav was the original bass player with Weather Report."
Yeah.
And so
monster bass player.
Yeah, he's a genius. He's a musical genius. And so I go over to his flat, and he tells me, you know, he just starts talking to me like I'm already in the band. You know, it's no prep.
Right.
It's like, this is what we're going to do.
Just dove in.
Kind of thing. And he goes, my record is coming out. He had a record called Magical Shepherd.
Okay.
With Warner Brothers. And he's got a grand piano in his living room and a sofa. And he sits down at the piano and he plays for me. Just improvisation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Just brilliant.
Wow.
Just brilliant stuff coming out of him, you know. And so he asked me when I can start. You know, today. So he says, "Well, Herbie Hancock is going on a tour in Europe, and he's already said I can use his studio for rehearsing. So let's start in a couple of days, as soon as Herbie leaves." And I said, "Okay." And I knew where that was because I just left Herbie's house. And so we met over there, and we met there for about a week and a half. And it's just me and him. And we go in the studio, and we just jam. Because he was playing like this double neck guitar. The bottom neck was guitar and the top neck was bass.
Okay.
And he'd start a bass line and I'd start a groove along with the bass line, and it was all you know, very, it was always that tempo,
okay,
know, or faster. And he'd set the groove, and then he'd just start playing guitar. And just wailing on guitar, you know, and then sometime 20 or 30 minutes later, he'd come back in with the bass, you know.
Oh.
And we just like start playing and play to exhaustion.
Wow.
You know. And then we go outside, cool off, and come back in and do it again.
Wow.
You know. And then we moved to Marin, and we started rehearsing, got other players in the band. My friend Al Key came in on bass. And we just started rehearsing. We went out on tour for 6 months. Miroslav was getting very bad reviews because people wanted him to play upright bass.
Well, yeah, I would. That was his calling card. Yeah,
yeah, and he was trying to be Mahavishnu Orchestra,
right?
And the record company complained. So we moved out of the house. He didn't lose the house. We moved up to Redding, California, and rented this A-frame house up there and this old theater that hadn't been open in years, still had radiator heat, and the radiator heat was not working. So we load our gear in there, everything. You know, we had a sound man, we had roadies. They'd set stuff up, and while we were rehearsing every day, some guy would be working on the pipes, you know, and maybe the heat would come on for like an hour and then it would go off again. And he'd have to start working on them again. But it was so cold up there in Redding during the wintertime that it's like we had on coats trying to play, and then it was useless. So we'd go home, go back to the house, and come back the next day and the same thing. And so it was pretty frustrating. And then Warner Brothers just kind of cut off the flow of cash.
Oh, wow.
And we snuck out of Redding in the dead of night.
But you wound up touring with Miroslav for a while, though.
6 months.
Yeah, that's a good stretch.
Yeah.
Was 6 months straight?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Wow. And then he lost his deal, right?
He lost his deal. And he had always been talking to me. He knew Tony Williams was my favorite player. But the thing, you know, we were going about the turning point for me was having to learn Miroslav's record because Jack DeJohnette had played drums on that record. So I had to learn how to play that stuff.
No pressure.
Yeah. And I was always listening. Well, even when I was with Temptations, I was listening to Stanley Clarke, Tony Williams, Billy Cobham, all the fusion guys, the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And Miroslav said, you need to go to Boston and study with Alan Dawson because he taught Tony. And I was sold. I said, sure.
Wow.
So he broke up the band. I drove his car to the East Coast. He moved to New York. I moved to Boston, dropped off my stuff. 2 days after that, I drove down to New York, dropped off his car, got on a plane, came back to Boston, and started looking for Alan Dawson.
How hard was that?
It wasn't hard, but you just didn't get to him, you know?
Right. No direct line.
Yeah, no direct line. You had to have an introduction.
Now, would it be fair to say at the time you're known as an R&B drummer? Because that's all the recordings, mostly in the R&B kind of world.
Right.
And even how R&B was changing into that sort of funkier disco kind of thing, but it's still R&B.
Yeah.
And was it a conscious thing that you wanted to become a jazz drummer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I got introduced. I had a cousin who was a drug dealer at a club in Roxbury.
Sure.
And he talked to the club owner and to the band. They had a regular band there, and he introduced me to him, and I got in that band. And when I got in that band, I got to know other musicians around Boston, and I had already done the Temptations, done the recordings and sort of stuff, so I had a little clout.
Right, sure.
You know, and so some of them got me into Alan.
Okay.
You know.
Wow.
And that's when I started studying with him.
Was it, did it meet your expectations of who he was as a person, as a teacher? And
oh yeah, he was much more than I expected.
Yeah.
You know, I would go there not ready for my lessons. And this one day, he pulled out his address book. It was like a spiral notebook. And he flipped through the pages and he said, "Look at this, check this out." And I looked, and there was not an empty page in there. He said, "All those guys are waiting for your spot." And he never had trouble out of me practicing anymore.
I bet.
Man, I got so disciplined, which another thing that kind of coincided with that was that I was really getting into these guys, Chick Corea and John McLaughlin and Narda Michael Walden and Herbie and all. And I just, I realized they were all in something. They all had some sort of spiritual connection with an organization. Like McLaughlin had Sri Shimoy. Herbie was a Nichiren Shoshu Buddhist. Chick Scientologist. Narda Michael Walden was Nichiren Shoshu, not Sri Shimoy. And I met a guy in Boston who was a piano player. He was with Bhagwan Rajneesh. He had to wear orange all the time. They call them the orange people. And so at that point, I started going, well, maybe I need some like a guru or something.
Spirituality.
Yeah, to help me kind of get disciplined, Maybe it's going to open up a way of thinking or something.
That makes sense.
For me,
So this is while you're at Berkeley and studying with Alan and all
Yeah,
this
while
stuff?
I'm studying with Alan. And so my mom got me this practice pad kit. And I started practicing like a madman. And I joined this organization called Self-Realization Fellowship, start meditating twice a day. That went to 3 times a day. And then sometimes I meditated so much that I lost count. But I got very disciplined.
Yeah.
Because that in itself is a discipline. And I practiced like a madman. I had gigs around town. It's pretty cool.
Well, that's crazy. Look forward to hearing more about this after the break.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on intertalkradio.com.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
All right, we're back. Hey, I wanted to ask you, now it seems like with this basically, is it fair to call it a cult kind of
yes.
thing? It seems like your intent was more, a lot of your heroes, the really intense musical geniuses that requires a lot of discipline. It seems like it was more of that than a spiritual thing.
Oh, definitely. There was nothing spiritual about it. Even if I thought it had some spiritual validity, my intent at the time I got into it, and as I got deeper into it, was definitely about what it could do for me, how it could help me. And it did, I stopped doing drugs. I practiced like a madman. I could practice for hours and think nothing of it.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes you socially, it affects you socially, because I didn't hang out much because I would think that I would rather be home practicing. I'm wasting my time, doing nothing, hanging out.
Yeah.
And so I pretty much only went out when I had a gig or a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Other than that, I was always at home practicing.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a double-edged sword, too, because sometimes going out is a form of networking, where people look across the room and go, oh, yeah, that guy. When I first moved to Nashville, I did that all the time. I went to like 10 clubs a night, order a club soda and drink half of it, say your hellos, and go to the next one, just so people go like, who is that dude?
But for some reason, I never had a problem getting a gig.
Yeah.
I had played with some great bands.
Yeah, you had a
Boston.
good calling card.
Man, I played with some great bands in Boston, a lot of great musicians.
Was this mostly in a jazz kind of vein now?
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
Or fusion, jazz fusion, that sort of thing.
So how long did you stay at Berkeley and with Alan Dawson and all that?
Well, I stayed at Berkeley for a semester because when I got to Boston, Alan had decided to leave Berkeley and just teach privately from his house, but I had already paid my tuition. So I went to Berkeley for a semester, and during that semester, I found Alan and got a time slot and just committed all my resources to studying with him.
Okay, that makes sense. How long did you study with Alan then?
2 years.
2 years.
Sometimes I wish I never left.
Really?
Well, sometimes I think I left too soon.
2 years is pretty intense.
It's pretty intense, but he started with me from the beginning because I knew nothing about the technique of jazz drumming, all the implications, I could imitate certain things, but I was just imitating, but to get into it and know why it does that and why it's supposed to do that and how you do it to get it to that point. He was definitely the guy,
Okay, well that's so if your time was too short, what made you leave?
Well, the Great Blizzard of 1979. That's the blizzard they had in Boston. You couldn't see the cars in the street for the snow.
I actually remember this.
Yes. We were walking on top of cars, and they had actually built tunnels down the sidewalks. There was snow tunnels that you walked through, and that was melting. And as it melted, there was a lot of water around, and I had a rehearsal one day, and I'm standing out on the corner, and I got my drum cases all stacked up neatly, and I'm trying to hail a cab. And this car comes by and hits a puddle of water, and me and my case is just soaked, And I start thinking then about, I got to get out of here,
You're from North Carolina. You ain't exactly built for blizzards.
Right. And my friend Al Key, who I had gotten the gig with Miroslav with, he had, after Miroslav's band broke up, he moved to Sacramento. And so he called me and he went, man, we need you to come out to California. We're putting together a band. I'm playing with this amazing keyboard player, Roger Smith. Roger is now the organist with Tower of Power.
Yeah.
And can you come? And I said, yeah, I can come.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I'll be there. So I moved to Sacramento. That was my first time moving to Sacramento.
Was this connected all to Peterbilt?
No. I met Peter during that time.
Okay.
Because Charlie Peacock was in Sacramento. I met Charlie and all those guys, some great musicians in Sacramento. Even now, they always...
It's hard to imagine. I've played Sacramento many times, and I don't think of it as a music mecca.
Oh, it was.
But I know. I was Lyle Workman, right?
Lyle was there, yeah.
The guy's amazing.
Yeah.
Bourgeois Tag.
Brent Bourgeois, Larry Tagg, Henry Robinette, Steve Holman, Joe, Professor Joe, whose last name is leaving me right now. But Joe, forgive me. I love you.
So were you still doing a lot of jazz and fusion?
Yeah. We'd play almost every night. The same bunch of guys. Darius Babazadeh on saxophone, Tom Perrin on trumpet, Eric Heilman on bass, Eric Clevin on bass, just all these guys. And every night, for a time, we play the same club like 5 nights a week. But on a different night, a different person would be the leader.
Mm-hmm.
We play the same songs, but one night it's Darius's band, the next night it's called Henry's band, on and on and on.
Yeah.
And Charlie was beginning to do his thing, and I played with him. This is before he became a Christian.
Charlie Peacock.
Yeah, Charlie Peacock. We do jazz trio gigs together. And then I got this thing. I wanted to go to the school, so I moved back to North Carolina and went to the School of the Arts in Winston-Salem for a semester. And while I was there, I realized that I did not want to be a classical percussionist, which is all you could learn about there.
Okay.
I just had too much Alan Dawson and too much Tony Williams.
Right.
And so while I was in Sacramento, I had met Peterbilt from Pearl Harbor and the Explosions.
Right.
Because he wanted to do a big party band with me and Charlie and some guys in Sacramento and his friends in San Francisco. But Charlie and I, we didn't want to do that. So after I moved to North Carolina, I got a call from Peter one day, and he said, I have a producer. His name is David Kahn, and a recording studio owner, David Robertson, who want to back me to put together a band. And we want you to come out and be the drummer.
Oh, wow. How long were you back in North Carolina when this call comes?
About 6 months.
Okay.
I was playing with this band called Chaser.
Okay.
We were playing top 40 music, and they would give me a solo every night in a discotheque.
Okay.
And then they'd leave the stage.
The 70s drum solo.
They'd leave the stage and come back whenever they thought, okay, he's done now. It was quite interesting because we're playing disco music.
Right.
And I take off on one of my Tony Williams sprints.
Oh, you jazzed over.
Oh, yeah, I jazzed over.
Awesome. So not really a dance thing.
Yeah, it's the only way I knew how to do it.
People having seizures.
Yeah, you couldn't dance while I was doing it.
Okay, gotcha.
You had to stop dancing and either pay attention to me or go to the bar or talk to your friends or something. But it was pretty cool.
It's funny from my introduction to you would be in the 80s, which people kept telling me about this band, the 77s, and who really were right there, almost a huge band. I mean, they had a lot, they were set up to be. And they go like, you got, and I listened to it. I'm like, who the heck is this drummer? The guy's a beast. You know, it's just so heavy and cool. And they were like, oh, and I'd say somebody, I even read it. A lot of people at the time were going like, yeah, he's the Black John Bonham, which is so funny when the story up to here is jazz, fusion, R&B, Temptations, and Smiling Faces. You know, it doesn't compute to be the Black John Bonham.
Right. I love Bonham. I was living in Detroit when FM radio started. And I remember one time being in my car driving home. FM radio had just started. And they would play the entire cuts on LPs, and with no advertisement, nobody interrupting or anything like that. And it was in stereo. And Black Dog came on one night while I was driving home. I was like, who is that, man?
Yeah.
That is so cool. And like I was telling you, Norman Whitfield used to give me like $50 and say, go buy some records. And I bought stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because he was into that stuff. He was into Sly and the Family Stone and people like that. He brought the psychedelic thing to Motown.
Definitely.
You know, so we're on the same page with that sort of stuff,
sort of
you know.
But it's still interesting to me that you've got this quasi spiritual thing, and then jazz, Tony Williams, all that. It doesn't. When I was a kid, jazzers looked down on bands like Led Zeppelin and rock music. The jazzers, like, rock was beneath them.
I don't know.
It just never hit you that way.
Never happened to me. You know, I like one type of music. That's good music.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And that never happened to me because I just wasn't in a position to pledge allegiance to any one style.
Right. You want to get work.
Yeah, wanted to get work, and opportunities sprung up, and you never knew what it was going to be like, what the thing was going to be. So you had to be kind of well-rounded. You had to know about certain things and about certain bands and stuff like that. And when I went to San Francisco from North Carolina and got in Peterbilt, we ended up being what they call a power funk trio. We had Dan Hart on bass, and later we got Dan Newsom on keyboards, making us a quartet. But initially we started out as a trio, and we did all these demos trying to get record deals, and it was like really hard kind of rock funk.
Interesting. And this is late 70s, early 80s, somewhere there, early 80s?
This is like 81,
okay,
82, 81, 82. And
so all that kind of Brothers Johnson, Graham Central Station was already around.
Yeah. And Peter had already been in Pearl Harbor and the explosions, and that group broke up. And so that was playing with Peter around San Francisco is how I got to meet the people in Romeo Void.
Right.
And through David Kahn, who was producing our demos, got the gig to produce the next Romeo Void record called Instincts.
Yeah. That's a great record, by the way. I loved it at the time and still do.
Yeah.
Deborah had a really interesting voice. It was a really interesting band for a so-called new wave band.
Yeah. I personally like their stuff without me better. Never Say Never, all that sort of stuff.
Dude, Girl in Trouble is so good.
Yeah, Girl in Trouble is good. But, I really like Larry's playing. Yeah, I could never play like Larry.
He could have fooled me.
He definitely had his thing. But anyway.
Cool gig nonetheless.
Very cool gig. Unfortunately, it had started to come apart long before I got in it. And while I was in it, it did come apart. And we just did one record, one tour, and then it was over. But simultaneously, while I was doing Romeo Void, Charlie Peacock had become a Christian in Sacramento. And he joined this band called Vector.
Right.
And they were doing their first record. and Steve Griffith was the bass player, the singer, and the drummer, and he was hell bent on doing all three on this record. So he starts off with drums, and they know it's not going to work.
Okay.
So Charlie asked the executives at Exit, if they can call me. Mm-hmm. I'm not a Christian.
Right.
But yeah, you can call them. So I come up, I do that. And
man, this is going to enter into such a cool thing because the whole Exit record is very important to early Christian music. Mm-hmm. And obviously, we're going to have to pick this up again.
Obviously.
And I look forward to it.
Yeah, man. Thank you to Pitbull Audio and Studio Instrument Rentals and all my pals at Intertalk Radio.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al DiMeola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.